This is an introduction to the sound element. I've got an MP3 player here, and this is Scridgets. I've got an SD card in the MP3 player. If I take the SD card out, the source of the music goes to none here. The property that indicates, this is a property that indicates the source of the music. If I put in a file number, there's a file on that SD card that has a name that matches this number. And now I'm going to turn on the play control and it starts playing. Or if I put the play property to 0, then it pauses. Now it's a bit loud, so I'm going to turn it down a bit. There's your volume property. We've got a mute property which causes the sound volume to go to 0 instantaneously without changing the volume setting. If I want to end the song, I can click on the end property, because when it's playing, the end property is 0, and when it finishes, the end property goes back to 1, which means it's at the end of the song. The one other property we have here is the VU property. Here, I'm going to put that file back in. Did you see end went low when I did that? Let's do it again. Oh, hang on. How's that going to work? Stop the song, 101, and watch end. End just went low. Went to 0, which means false. The last property here is called VU. VU stands for volume units, and what volume units are, it's measuring how loud sound is. This isn't implemented on this gadget. It doesn't have the volume unit feature built into this hardware, so we don't get anything there. So now, what I'm going to do is get some buttons, and we're going to program these buttons to do some functions that you'd typically expect from an MP3 player. So firstly, we're going to take the first 3 buttons. We're just going to take the bit property, which goes to 1 when the button is pressed. We'll get 3 of those. And then on the 4th button, we're going to use the number property, which toggles when the button's pressed. Okay, so we could look at that right now. Press each of these buttons. There's button changing. This one goes to 1 when I press it, 0 when I let go. This one goes to 1 when I press it, 0 when I let go. Same with that one. Now we could label those. That last one's red, so we'll put red on there so we don't forget. We're going to put blue on that one. And we're going to put white on that one. So those are our 2 whites, red and the blue. Now let's see, let's go back to our sound. We'll create a setter for the play property, which will set the play property to whatever is at its input. So we'll add that on. Immediately stops playing, because when you add it on and nothing's connected, it gets a 0 at its input. We're going to hook it up to this number property. Now this button is going to play and pause. Next, I'm going to set the volume to 10. And I'm going to take an action, add 10, subtract 10, hook one up to one button, one up to the other. So now we've got 2 white buttons. One adds to the volume, one that takes away from it. With this last one, I want to do a skip function. The way that's going to work is I'm going to take the file number, momentarily change it to 1, and I'm going to use an add function in that. So now I've got a button that will add one to the file number. So if I were to make the file number 101, say, so the file's playing now, and I press that button. Is that blue? Oh, blue. No, red. It's going forward to the next song. Oh, I can't go back. We don't even have a 104. So what we've done sometimes to fix that is we've got a combiner and we get an AND function. And we AND the two middle buttons, the two white buttons together. And when that is pressed, those two are pressed together, we're going to make it 101, which is the first song. Okay, file equals 101. Okay, so now I did a string of free shows through the South. Okay, so now I can press red and it's going to the next song. Or I can press the two white buttons, which are the two middle ones, and it goes back to the first song. Now you might think that's a bit hokey, but basically we're trying to take 4 buttons and make them do what you usually have 6 buttons to do. Okay, so the last thing I want to add to this, there's a couple of things. One is that when it starts up, I want the file to be 101, because I don't want to have to press the skip button 100 times to get to the first song. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook file equals 101 up to the start trigger. And the other thing I want to do is I want at the end of the song, I want to go to the next song. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the end property, which goes from 0 to 1 at the end of the song, and I'm going to hook that up to what we want, file plus 1. Okay, so we got that file plus 1. Yeah. And I'm going to hook that up to the end property. Okay, so I don't know, where are we now? 1, 1. So there's our first song. And what I need to do is I need to let this song play all the way through until end goes from 0 to 1, because I don't have any way of changing how far along in the song it's currently playing. And that's due to this MP3 player we're using. It doesn't do that. So with a better MP3 player, then we'd be able to just fast forward to where we wanted to be in the song. But this is very inexpensive, so it doesn't have all those extra features. Okay, so now one other thing I want to do is we're going to watch this get to the end of the song and trigger the file, going to the next file. And I want to be able to see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the file property, get it. There's a getter on the file property. And I'm going to put a display on that. And you'll see when end gets to go to 1, it'll trigger this file plus 1, and this will become 102. Now that's pretty much the whole story. There's no need to program it in this particular way. This is just the way that we do by default when people are building these MP3 players. We use this standard simple program. Okay, so just reviewing here, we've got play, pause, volume down, volume up. You can see when we pause, the red light goes off on the MP3 player. Now, I wanted to, play you guys the Beatles, but they wouldn't let me. So I've got some. Instead, you get me and my buddy. It's gonna take a while.
I'll take my girl to bed, and my lace curtains dance in the wind. Listen, can sing us both to sleep, sweet baby. Sings me away.
We're getting there. I like this end here. Any second. There it goes. Now it's 102 and it's playing the next song. So that'll keep playing until it gets to the last song, where you go 0, 1, or sorry, 1, 2, 3, and if there's no fourth song, it'll just stop then. So that's an introduction to the sound element and how to program it for an MP3 player. Doing a fade out here on the music.